Hey, how do you do? I wanted to talk a little bit about the media. Not talking about the alternative media. I'm talking about the I can't believe a word you're telling me media. And it's not because the anchors have malicious intent. It's not because they know that they're lying and they do it. They might suspect it. The thing is, a lot of them don't even end up writing their own script. And even if they do, they're not getting the story themselves. These are not the journalists who gather the stories. These are anchors. They are more or less actors. As far as network news goes, all the different networks get their news from the same source, namely Associated Press, the AP. And that would be why when you turn from channel to channel, you hear the same stories, because they all pop up through the AP. They get a stream of all the different stories. And I don't know if you've ever heard, where they'll have a whole bunch of clips of different anchors saying the exact same words. It's not like they're kissing up to anyone. It's just they're using the exact same words because they're lazy and don't rewrite the script. But they all have the same story. So what it does to the public when all the stories match up is that the average person thinks that, well, that must be true because all of the news stations agree that that's true. Well, they're all Associated Press. They're all getting the same story. And then what happens is, say, so many people go home and they watch TV for the evening, same old, go to bed, wake up, go back to work, right? And then, so they run into coworkers and they'll talk about what was on the news the night before. So you have a further confirmation. It's like, well, they saw it and I saw it and it's on all the TV stations. It must be true. It must be true because everybody agrees. But yet they're all seeing the same source. So I don't have an answer to it, but I'm not sure that everybody realizes that when they get stories that are absolute bullshit. And by the way, the Associated Press is a New York Times associated company. I think they own it outright. So everything is coming from New York Times, more or less. And I don't think the average person knows that. They don't realize that they're getting the same regurgitated story from all these sources, but it's the same source. What a good anchor usually does is say, here's the story, I'm going to rewrite it in my own way, and then it'll go on the air. That's why you see it in different ways on different stations. But I guarantee you, they're all seeing the exact same story. And they choose, generally speaking, they choose what stories they're going to cover for the news. And that all happens with, with the program director, and, producers, and the producers put their show together, and then these are the stories we want to cover. Like reporters and anchors can, say, I want to do this story or what, but it's really up to, the producer what's going to be in the show. And if they run short, if the story runs long, whatever, they cut out stories. They have to cut out stories right there on the spot. And I got to give it up to anchors. What they do, they've got it in their ear. They're hearing the producer and the director talking in their ear the whole time that they're reading from a teleprompter on the air, seamlessly and smoothly. And they've got like barking commands in their ear. Okay, we got to drop the story. We got to go on to the next story. And they have to listen because they're told that they got like 10 seconds. We got 10 seconds, and they have to come up with a smooth way to go that 10 seconds, not shorter, not longer, exactly the 10 seconds, and then they cut to a commercial break. Anchors are incredible, and they get paid appropriately for what they do. They get paid a lot, partly because they're talent. They're a public figure, so to speak. So I wanted to put that out there so people understand what the mainstream media is doing when they're full of shit. when they're all full of shit. It's because they're going to the same source. They don't have time to go through it all, and they do the same thing. You're like, well, look, everybody else has got this story, so we've got to run it too. And it's not that they know that it's true, it's that everybody else is running the story, and to compete, they've got to run it too, for big stories especially. But in a news station, I'm sure you've maybe seen in the background all these different televisions. Well, they put up all the other TV stations, all the other news stations, so they can keep an eye on them and see if they've got something first, and then they jump right on it. So I wanted to put that out there so that it's more understood what the process is in network news. I worked there for over 20 years, between mainstream, Alphabet, CBS. I worked for a CBS affiliate for a long time, and some different smaller networks. CBS is the biggest network I worked for. So I know how it works. I worked there as an engineer, so I'm really kind of behind the scenes and talk to everybody. I got an anchor who their computer won't boot or whatever. So what an engineer does is they're always running around trying to fix everything so that everything goes smoothly on the air, especially during live news. So that's kind of how it goes. Or, to be fair, I haven't worked in television for a few years now, but I assume that the general structure is pretty much the same. I'm sure there are small differences, but I think that they all go to AP. If they don't, they all go to something else, and they're not just picking stories from the ether. They have networks. They pay for network setups that feed. They have feeds, all the live feeds from AP. So they choose their stories and they script it out, and the script's interesting. The script, when they write the script, there's software that tells them that if they speak a certain amount of words per minute, this is how long exactly this script is going to go. So they can fit the stories just right into the story Tetris of the different news pieces. It's incredible what goes on behind the scene. Anyway, but they all get it from the same source. So don't ever believe it just because all the stations are saying so. No, unless they have serious evidence to back it up. You just can't believe it. There are too many other hands in that, and they are up at higher levels. It sounds very conspiracy, but it's not. It's just the way the system works. And then if somebody's up at the AP and New York Times level, they can influence the whole world's worth of news, because that's where it comes from. So that happens. Anyway, that's it. Take care.